What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another podcast episode of BracketBusters. If you didn't know, you missed a lot out on last Friday. So we had three more teams realigning into new conferences. We had Missouri State leaving the Missouri Valley Conference and joining Conference USA. And then we had Seattle U and Grand Canyon leaving the WAC to join the WCC. So realignment's really nothing new this day and age between the NIL money, college football increasing the revenue, and college football kind of taking dominance over college basketball and other athletic sports. A lot of teams are looking to realign. The WCC was not necessarily a response to college football. Missouri State purely was, though. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk primarily about Missouri State. If you don't follow me on Substack already and read some of our articles, I recommend subscribing to Substack, as this week we'll be posting an article as well discussing Seattle U and Grand Canyon's moves into the WCC. But for today's purposes, we're going to be talking specifically about Missouri State. So, if you didn't know, last Friday Missouri State did announce that they were going to be leaving the Missouri Valley. So it's kind of a unique move because for the most part this is specifically around college football. I'll get into more of the specifics later. If you didn't know, the Missouri Valley Conference does have football. However, they're in the FCS compared to where Conference USA is in the FBS. So it makes sense for a team wanting, or a college wanting to move forward into the FBS world, trying to get into bowl games and that kind of thing. So from that sense, it does make sense of the move. However, from a college basketball perspective, it is technically a step backwards. Conference USA was ranked 15th in Ken Palm last year, comparative to the Missouri Valley, which is ranked 10th best conference in all of college basketball last year. So, just giving a little bit of history here, Missouri State had been a member of the Missouri Valley Conference since 1990. So, it's been over 3 decades at this point in time where they've been in the Missouri Valley. And it's really a shame to see them leave. However, it's been nothing out of the ordinary for them to not meet their expectation levels. And what I mean by that is it's been a long time since they've been to the NCAA tournament. It's been since 1999. Missouri State also struggled to bring fans to Arch Madness. If you don't know, Arch Madness is the legendary, well, I call that legendary because I do have my UE pullover on over here. But it is the legendary conference tournament in St. Louis every single year for the Missouri Valley Conference. And just another example of why Missouri State sometimes failed to meet expectations and why I don't actually think this is a bad move for the Missouri Valley. I'll get into what I do think they need to do to be able to cover themselves up here and correct this move. I don't think it's that huge of a deal, honestly, looking at it on the surface. Again, this is purely a football move. This is getting Missouri State into the FBS. However, while it maybe is not a big deal to lose them in college basketball, on the college football side, they've only been to the two FCS playoff appearances since 1990. They haven't had a lot of success either. So a lot of people, I don't truly follow college football that closely, but a lot of people are saying that they're joking that they're going to probably just perform worse in Conference USA. But hey, maybe they have an alumni that's funding millions of dollars into the football program to try to get them relevant again. Maybe that's what's going on behind the scenes. But regardless, it is actually a loss in other athletics. And I think like when we talk about conference realignments, we lose the vision of everything outside of the two main visible sports. Two main visible sports being men's college basketball and college football. It's the two things that we all see. And yeah, there's, when it comes tournament time, women's college basketball is popular. Obviously, Caitlin Clark has escalated that to a whole other level in college and women's college basketball. There's a lot of great women out there who are bringing that sport alive. And, at this point in time, it's still just like not as visible as men's college basketball and as college football. However, again, that's going to increase, but Missouri State was a great example of a women's team that was fantastic in college basketball. They've won 20 plus games 8 out of the last 9 seasons. They've had 4 NCAA appearances. They were a 5 seed in 2021. They lost in the Sweet 16 to Stanford that year. So, great women's basketball program. Baseball team's also been great. They went to the College World Series 5 times in the last 12 years. 2 of those times actually advanced to the Super Regionals round, and then they've actually won 30 plus games 8 out of those last 12 seasons. So again, sometimes you lose that, sense of college basketball and football running everything. You have other sports that these teams can dominate in. You think about Vanderbilt, what do you immediately think about? You think about their football team being terrible for the last decade since James Franklin left. And you also think about the basketball team being terrible since Kevin Stallings left. So you don't think about the fact that unless you watch college baseball, they have one of the best college baseball teams in the entire country. You also don't think about their bowling randomly being very good or their tennis team being very good. Like a lot of these schools that you associate with just two specific sports are actually good in other areas. So while Missouri State, on the surface, it does look like it's not a huge deal. You're losing a basketball team that's failed to meet expectations, and you're losing a football team that, well, isn't really that good. However, you are losing the other sports. You're losing the baseball team and the women's basketball team. But for today, obviously, we're going to talk about men's college basketball. So we're going to kind of move on past that here. And then really, let's just dive into my opinion of the move. I think it's questionable at best. I'm obviously biased to college basketball, so I think it's like you're moving backwards in a sense. And everybody online's been freaking out because they're all saying, oh, but this is another team that's left. For context, Creighton, Creighton, Wichita State, and Loyola have all left within the last decade and a half or so. So, everybody's saying like, oh, Missouri State's just a stepping ladder to get into a better conference. Creighton went to the Big East, Wichita State went to that AAC, and then Loyola went to the A10. So really, yes, they're correct that a lot of these teams have advanced forward. Obviously, Creighton has become what they've become. And then Wichita State, just like speaking of that for a second, that move was primarily for football. The Cook brothers have obviously donated just a insane amount of money into those programs at Wichita State. That's how they got to where they were. You think at the time they were a 1 seed from the Missouri Valley at one point in time in the NCAA tournament. So they funded a lot of money into that football team, and that was a lot of the reason why they moved. Again, Missouri Valley's FCS, so they advanced into the FBS, and also just like an elevated conference overall. So then Loyola Chicago, obviously hot off their Final Four run and NCAA tournament appearances, went to the A10, which is a step above the Missouri Valley. I know a lot of people compare those two, and there's no doubt the A10 is a better mid-major college basketball tournament. It is the true, what I would call the Big East of mid-major conferences. It is primarily only a basketball conference, and it is, in my opinion, the most elite mid-major college basketball. You can question that about the Mountain West. That's at this point in time even borderline a mid-major. But in terms of true mid-major conferences, A10 is a phenomenal league every single year. So you have those two, and then you look at the transfer portal. And really, they lost nearly all of the MVC players that were all MVC players. Ben Hummerkaus went from UE to Illinois. Kate Tyson went from Belmont to North Carolina. Jacoby Gillespie went from Belmont to Maryland. And Connor Hickman went from Bradley, Cincinnati. And pretty much everyone's gone. Everyone that was an all-MVC player, for the most part, is gone. And that is where it comes into play, where I've talked about it a lot on our Substack and talked about it a lot just online in general. The Missouri Valley is a stepping stone for players. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. There's always going to be transfers. It's the way that college basketball is becoming with the wide open portal and the NIL money. The Missouri Valley is going to be that stepping stone where you can come down, perform, and then you can go up to a major conference. You can go up to the SEC, the Big Ten. You can go up to all those, make more money, and play for those big schools. That is unfortunately what it's becoming, and that shouldn't be anything of a surprise. So it is a little bit of a similar thing for actual schools themselves. I think you're going to see another school leave eventually. I think you see a Belmont join the A10, or you see Illinois State move to the MAC for football. I think both of those are possibilities, and you never know what else is possibly on the table. It really just depends on what a conference needs in terms of an extra school at that time, or if another school moves, or whatever the case is. We're going to see a lot more realignment over the next probably decade, simply for the fact that it is still trying to figure out what is going on with NIL money. Attendance is going to be down across the board. That is a known fact. If you don't know about that, I'd recommend Googling about it. It is becoming a major problem, especially for small private universities. So let's just kind of dive back into Missouri State. I think we kind of went off the track a little bit there. So Missouri State's leaving, so there's now an open spot. Missouri Valley for the longest time only had 10 teams in there, but then they went up to 12 when Belmont and Murray State joined a couple of years ago. So now they're back to 11. Most conferences prefer not to have an odd number. The A10 does. It's a little bit of exception to what the power schools do. So what direction does the Missouri Valley take? So I've seen a lot of things thrown out on the internet and I have my own personal opinions. And again, I want to add that I have no sources on this. I have talked to one person who has mentioned a couple of things in terms of maybe the direction that they're heading. For what it's worth, if that person is accurate, there's a lot of things on the board that could be happening. There's no guarantee that they could, another school could leave in a couple years. Maybe they stay odd until that happens, or they add another school, or they when that person leaves, they go to 10. There's a lot of things on the board at this point in time. So my opinion is we need to fill this spot with a splash. So what do I mean by that? Whenever they were going in to fill Loyola's spot, there was a lot of talk about like who was going to fill that role, and there was a heavy research done on both Omaha and UMKC. Those of you that don't know, UMKC is the University of Missouri, Kansas City. So why do I think that's bad? I think these two schools would be a mistake to fill with it, and my fear is the Missouri Valley no longer has a team in Missouri. So I think UMKC might get a really hard look. Don't know that for sure, obviously, but it does make sense for them to get looked at because they do fill that spot. I mean, the tournament's in St. Louis every year, and geographically it does make sense, and the conference called Missouri Valley Conference. So why do I not want these two schools? So we already have two schools in the conference that struggled mightily in both UIC and Valpo. Per UIC's website, they averaged 1,954 people a game. I'm going to be honest with you, I watch pretty much every single Missouri Valley game, and there's no way that's actually accurate. That's probably tickets sold. That's not true attendance, because there was a lot of games at UIC that it was just completely empty stadium. And I know back when they had some good teams, like in the mid-2000s, that they did draw, but this day and age, a lot of these like really major city, smaller schools just don't draw. They do have a new coach, and I think they're building a really nice team, so perhaps if they get some winning seasons behind them, that can change, but at this point in time, they are kind of an outlier in the Missouri Valley. The other outlier is Valpo. Valpo only averaged 1,478 a game. They pretty much played in a high school gym, so that one's 100% believable, and Valpo has struggled mightily since the Drews left. So those, you already have two schools that are kind of like outliers from the rest of the pack. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, Evansville struggled a lot recently, and yes, I'm an Evansville alumni, but I can tell you right now, they're turning it around. They went 17 and 18 last season, and they've always been good in attendance. Despite being horrendous for the last several years, they still averaged 4,600 a game, and they were fifth in Missouri Valley. So, even though, yes, the performance over the last several years have been bad, David Reichl's turning that ship around. They still draw attendance, so we're going to take them out of this equation. So you already have two schools who have pretty poor attendance and poor performance records to go with that. So UMKC last season averaged 1,130 people a game. They've never had a 20-plus win season, and they've never been to the NCAA tournament. There's no reason to add them to the Missouri Valley. Omaha, for comparison, was another school that was heavily looked at. They averaged 2,079 a game, and their history is really not much better than UMKC. They've never been to the NCAA tournament, and they've only had one 20-plus win season. And then three out of the last 4 seasons, they haven't even won 10 games. So really, no sense in adding either of those. You already have two people who struggle in UIC and Valpo to compete with the rest of the league. Why bring another one in? And they already struggle at their conferences that are significantly ranked lower than the Missouri Valley. So with that being said, who am I advocating for? So I presented 3 options that I think all provide a unique scenario in terms of like the direction that this conference can go. I'm going to present to St. Thomas, Wright State, and Northern Kentucky. So I'm going to list this off in order of preference. Let's start with Northern Kentucky because they would be my number 1 preference. They're probably the most appealing. So since transitioning to D1 in 2012, they've had 6 20-plus win seasons. They've had 3 NCAA tournament appearances. And in terms of attendance, they've averaged 3,270 a game. Already much better than USC, Valpo, way better than the other 2 schools I mentioned in terms of UIC and Omaha. So it's a kind of a no-brainer, in my opinion, for them to join the Missouri Valley. They would provide probably an immediate success. They fit geographically. Actually, if anything, they open up a new market in Cincinnati, where the Missouri Valley has no presence in currently whatsoever. They have a fan base that cares. And another positive, in my opinion, is they don't have a football program. So if you can find a school that is successful and doesn't have a football program, really your only risk is them joining the A10 or a power conference. And Northern Kentucky is not going to be joining a power conference at any point in time soon. The A10 is always a possibility to gobble up someone from the Missouri Valley, but I don't foresee that happening. Wright State is also another appealing option. They've been to 2 NCAA tournaments in the last 7 seasons. They finished with 20-plus wins 12 times since 2007. Their head coach, Scott Nagy, actually took the job at Southern Illinois in the Missouri Valley this past offseason. They averaged 4,067 a game, and they led the Horizon League in conference game attendance, which was just slightly ahead of second place Northern Kentucky. They also don't have a true college football team. They do have a club team that obviously that does count. So you're looking at 2 schools from the Horizon League who both don't have football teams, both have a lot of success in the recent years. I think I would slightly prefer Northern Kentucky simply for the fact that I think they have a lot of momentum going for them, but also Wright State would be a great addition as well. So I wanted to think a little bit outside the box in this last one. A lot of you probably don't know who St. Thomas is unless you're a true mid-major fan. They're my flyer pick here. They were talked about briefly whenever they were transitioning from D3 to Division I a couple seasons ago as a potential addition to the Missouri Valley. But their upside is super intriguing here. So they transitioned in 2021 from D3 to D1. They finished 19-14 in their second season and 20-13 last season, just in their third year. So a lot of success for a school jumping from D3 to D1. They're still building up a culture and fan base. They only averaged 1,307 a game, but I want to take a real key point here away from this. Their stadium only holds 1,800. So you might be thinking, well, why the heck am I suggesting an 1,800 cap stadium school, a small school in Minnesota, to be joining the Missouri Valley? Well, here's why. So they have some really rich alumni who are donating a lot of money to that school to make it popular. So Lee and Peggy Anderson already donated $60 million to build a student center, and now they're donating $75 million to build a brand new stadium, which is going to be hockey and basketball, total cap of 8,000. So St. Thomas is gearing up to become a legitimate school in some mid-major conference. Why not make that the Missouri Valley? The only caveat is they do have football, and the football program's actually very good. They only lost 1 game last year. They're one of the best for a school, again, that literally just transitioned from D3 to D1. So obviously their football program's playing the FCS. So what I fear is if they are pouring a lot of money into this athletic program, then they might not care to join the Missouri Valley if they're just going to jump ship to, let's say, again, joining a conference like the MAC. That way their football program can play FBS. So that's my only fear here. But however, the intriguing upside of what this school could be in, let's say, 5 years. Supposedly the stadium is going to be done in 2025. They've been met with some opposition with local residents not wanting the stadium to be built. That doesn't sound like it's going to be a problem, but I don't know if it's still on track. I couldn't find too much information about that. That being said, though, a lot of intriguing upside for this team. Honestly, kind of like Northern Kentucky is my top pick. I can make an argument between Wright State and St. Thomas being in. I think St. Thomas is just interesting. It's something different and a little bit outside the box. So, with all that being said, we don't really know what direction the Missouri Valley is going to take. Missouri State's not going to be moving until 2025. And there's a lot that can happen between now and then. Like I said, there's been rumors about Illinois State leaving for months now. I mean, that was even happening last year at this point, simply for football purposes. So if another school leaves, then all of a sudden you debate, do you want to go back to 12? Do you want to stay at 10? I think there's a lot of directions they can take. We might not know what's happening for a while. It could be a genuinely long time. It could be months until we know what's actually happening. So this is all pure speculation. However, this is my opinion that I would go with Northern Kentucky, Wright State, or St. Thomas. Just for complete transparency, some of the other schools that I've heard is Milwaukee, Bellarmine. I've heard, who else have I heard? Green Bay was another option. There was another school. Drawing a blank on what school that was at this moment. It was Western Illinois and Little Rock. Those are the other schools I've heard. So Western Illinois and Little Rock are coming out of the Ohio Valley. Bellarmine is coming, I don't want Bellarmine. Honestly, you can maybe intrigue me with Western Illinois or Little Rock. They've had some success in the Ohio Valley already, but they're coming from lesser conferences. They literally just joined the Ohio Valley like within the last couple of seasons as well. I really think we should go with the Horizon League team at the very worst. Go with the Summit League team to try to get a school that's been established already. Again, I know St. Thomas isn't established, but there's intriguing upside to that already. We can't afford to have a lame duck in the Missouri Valley. So that's my pure opinion. So curious your all thoughts. I think there's a lot of different directions you can go. I think there's a lot of different conversations you could have about, who you could try to poach from another conference and that kind of thing. Like, this realignment is becoming a reality. And I think if the Missouri Valley wants to succeed and they're not going to transition from FCS to FBS at any point in time, then we need to stay open to different ideas about how to keep the success of this league going, because part of what helps schools like Evansville and Drake and all these schools recruit is the fact that the Missouri Valley is a very competitive mid-major. Like I said, players are going to look to use them as a stepping stone to move up to another conference to make more money and get more playing time and succeed in NIL and potentially even go to the NBA. Or at the very least play overseas and make several $100,000. So it's very key that we can continue the success and we don't take 10 steps backwards. We don't want to be the 15th best conference in the country. We want to be 10th. We want to be 9th. We want to be 11th. Somewhere around that range of 10th is exactly where the Missouri Valley wants to be. So trying to find a school that's going to continue that trend of where they've been over the last several decades, a very long time, in terms of like how reputable the Missouri Valley truly is. So I'm curious your thoughts. I think there's a lot of different directions we go here. I saw some people throwing out South Dakota State and North Dakota State schools simply for the fact that both of their football programs are in the Missouri Valley already in terms of football. So there are a lot of different directions you can go here. Curious all your thoughts. So if you want, post them down in the comment section, comment on Substack, and I'm going to go ahead and just plug here in the last couple seconds. If you don't subscribe to me on Substack, I rarely do podcasts. I also rarely do video content. Might do some more video content here during the off season, but primarily you're going to get my content from Substack. So make sure to look at the links down below in the description and give me a subscription. That doesn't sound right, but we're going to go with that. Anyway, thank you.